Get your hands off me. I'm an attorney. Marcus Alexander's voice echoed through the marble hallway of Fairfield County Superior Court as Officer Ethan Caldwell slammed him against the wall, forearm pressed against his throat. "Sure you are," Caldwell sneered, his face inches from Marcus's. "And I'm the Attorney General." The security officer's badge glinted under the fluorescent lights as he applied more pressure. "You people are always causing trouble. Get the hell out of my courthouse." Marcus struggled to breathe, his Harvard Law School class ring scraping against the cold stone wall as he tried to maintain his composure. The expensive leather briefcase, a gift from his late father when he passed the bar exam, hit the floor with a sickening thud, scattering legal documents across the polished courthouse floor. "I'm representing Richardson," Marcus managed, his voice strained but steady. "Embezzlement case, courtroom 305. Judge Hernandez." Officer Caldwell laughed, a harsh sound that bounced off the walls. "You don't care who you claim to be. Your kind belongs behind bars, not defending criminals." His eyes narrowed as he twisted Marcus's arm behind his back. "Let me guess. Public defender, pro bono charity case, trying to impress some liberal law firm?" 15 feet away, bailiff Terrence Wallace watched the scene unfold, uncertainty flickering across his face. He'd worked the courthouse for 7 years and had never seen Caldwell this aggressive with an attorney, but the man pinned against the wall was wearing an expensive suit that seemed oddly familiar. Wallace's hand hovered over his radio, conflicted. "My bar license is in my wallet. If you'll just let me," Caldwell's grip tightened. "Shut up. I've heard enough excuses. Been doing this job 20 years and I know a trespasser when I see one." Marcus locked eyes with Officer Caldwell. "My client is waiting for me. Check the docket. Marcus Alexander, representing—" The punch came without warning, driving into Marcus's stomach with enough force to double him over. As he gasped for breath, Caldwell spun him around, metal handcuffs biting into his wrists with brutal efficiency. "Attempting to breach courthouse security, claiming to be an attorney, refusing to comply with security protocols." He yanked Marcus toward the exit as spectators parted silently. Typical. They watch too many TV shows, think they can just waltz in here pretending to be lawyers. Marcus's eyes locked onto the engraved sign above the courthouse entrance. Fairfield County Superior Court, where justice prevails. The irony wasn't lost on him as Caldwell dragged Marcus down the courthouse steps, handcuffs cutting into his wrists, his briefcase and scattered legal documents left behind on the marble floor. "You're making a serious mistake," Marcus said, quietly, maintaining his dignity despite the public humiliation. "I'm lead counsel on the Richardson case. It starts in 30 minutes. "Save it for someone who cares," Caldwell growled, shoving Marcus toward a security office. "One night in county lockup might teach you to respect authority." As they passed through the crowd, Marcus caught sight of someone he recognized, Sophia Rodriguez, the court clerk for Judge Hernandez. Her eyes widened in recognition, and for a brief moment, Marcus felt a flicker of hope. Then Caldwell shoved him through a side door, away from the witnesses, away from justice. Inside the small security office, Caldwell pushed Marcus into a chair. "Now let's see what you're really doing here. I told you, I'm defense counsel for the Richardson embezzlement case. Judge Hernandez, courtroom 305, 9 a.m. Caldwell laughed again. "Right, and I'm supposed to believe someone like you is the lead attorney on a high-profile white-collar case?" He picked up the phone. "Let's see what Central Booking thinks about your little charade." What Officer Caldwell didn't know, what he couldn't possibly have imagined as he called to arrange for Marcus's transfer to county jail, was that in exactly 27 minutes, the entire power dynamic between them would be dramatically reversed. And it would happen in front of a packed courtroom with Marcus Alexander exactly where he belonged, at the defense table. Would you fight back or stay calm if you were Marcus? Let me know in the comments. The holding room smelled of industrial cleaner and stale coffee. Marcus sat on a hard plastic chair, handcuffs still biting into his wrists, watching the minute hand of the wall clock tick inexorably toward 9 a.m. Each passing moment was another step closer to his client facing a hostile courtroom without representation. Through the small window in the door, he could see Officer Caldwell filling out paperwork, occasionally glancing up with a self-satisfied smirk. 20 years on the job had taught Caldwell how to work the system. The incident report would read like so many others. Aggressive individual, refused to follow protocols, resisted security measures. By the end of the day, it would be Marcus facing charges, not Caldwell facing accountability. Marcus closed his eyes, centering himself. This wasn't his first experience with discrimination, though perhaps the most blatant. His mind drifted back to his first day at Yale Law School 15 years earlier. Walking into Professor Harrington's constitutional law class, finding his assigned seat empty because someone had left a note. Scholarship seats in the back. Even then, he'd remained calm, taking his rightful place despite the stares and whispers. By graduation, he'd been editor of the Yale Law Review, finished in the top 3% of his class, and argued 5 moot court competitions. He'd gone on to win landmark cases before the Supreme Court, including Torres v. Michigan, which had rewritten the standards for police detention of suspects without probable cause. The irony wasn't lost on him. "One phone call," Marcus said as Caldwell passed by the holding room door. "That's standard procedure, even for your so-called trespassers." Caldwell paused, then shrugged. "Fine, make it quick." He unlocked the door, led Marcus to a desk phone, and dialed 9 for an outside line. 2 minutes. Marcus dialed a number from memory. "Law offices of Chen and Alexander," came the crisp voice of his partner. "Marcus, it's Joe. I've been detained at the courthouse by security. Richardson case starts in," he glanced at the clock, "20 minutes. I need you to notify Judge Hernandez's chambers immediately." "Detained?" Zoe's voice sharpened. "On what grounds?" "Apparently, I don't look like an attorney," Marcus replied, holding Caldwell's gaze steadily. There was a brief silence. "I'm on my way. Is your briefcase with you?" "No. My documents are scattered across the courthouse floor." "Time's up," Caldwell said, reaching for the phone. "Courtroom 305, Judge Hernandez," Marcus said quickly before Caldwell ended the call. Back in the holding room, Marcus watched the clock. 9 minutes until the Richardson case was called to order. He had built his reputation on punctuality and preparation. In 7 years of practice, he had never been late for court until today. Meanwhile, in another part of the courthouse, Court Clerk Sophia Rodriguez approached Bailiff Wallace with hesitation. "Terrence, that man Officer Caldwell detained, I'm pretty sure that's Marcus Alexander." Wallace frowned. "Name sounds familiar." "It should. He argued before the Supreme Court last year, won the Torres case." She lowered her voice further. "He's scheduled as defense counsel for the Richardson embezzlement case this morning." Wallace's face drained of color. "Are you certain?" "Positive. I processed his filing motions last week. Harvard Law. Heads his own firm with Zoe Chen. They're handling all the high-profile white-collar cases in the district." Wallace glanced toward the security office. "Caldwell said he was a trespasser." Caldwell was wrong, very wrong. In courtroom 305, Judge Patricia Hernandez checked her watch with growing impatience. The gallery was filled with reporters. The Richardson embezzlement case had garnered significant media attention. The defendant, Gregory Richardson, sat nervously at the defense table, alone except for his junior counsel, a fresh-faced associate barely out of law school. "Where is lead counsel?" Judge Hernandez asked the young attorney. I'm not sure, Your Honor. Mr. Alexander is never late. He was supposed to meet here at 8:30. The judge frowned. "We'll give him 5 more minutes, then we're proceeding." District Attorney Vincent Taylor smiled thinly. Perhaps Mr. Richardson should consider alternate representation, Your Honor. Someone more reliable. In the security office, Officer Caldwell was enjoying the moment, regaling two fellow officers with his morning's work. "You should have seen this guy," he laughed, leaning back in his chair. "Designer suit, fancy watch, acting like he owned the place, claimed to be some hotshot attorney." "What was the name again?" Officer Reyes scrolling through his phone. "Alexander something. Marcus Alexander." Caldwell waved dismissively. Probably saw the name on the docket and decided to try his luck. Reyes' scrolling stopped abruptly. He turned his phone around, showing a news article with a photograph. "Is this him?" Caldwell glanced at the screen. "Supreme Court victory. Attorney Marcus Alexander wins landmark police detention of suspects without probable cause." For the first time, doubt flickered across his face. The holding room door burst open. Zoe Chen stood there, 5'4" of barely contained fury. Behind her was Sofia Rodriguez and the courthouse chief of security. "Release him now," Chen demanded, her Harvard Law diploma practically radiating from her precise diction. The chief of security looked from Chen to Caldwell to Marcus, still handcuffed in the holding room. "What the hell is going on here?" "A mistake," Caldwell muttered, suddenly finding the floor intensely interesting. "Unlock those cuffs," he ordered, "now." As the handcuffs fell away, Marcus stood, rubbing his wrists. He straightened his tie, adjusted his jacket, and checked his watch. "The Richardson case was scheduled to begin 2 minutes ago. I need to get to courtroom 305. "Your briefcase and documents have been collected," Rodriguez told him. "They're waiting at the defense table." Marcus nodded his thanks and moved toward the door, but the chief of security blocked his path. "Mr. Alexander, we need to address what happened here. We'll need a statement and—" "After court," Marcus replied firmly. "My client comes first." As he exited the security office, Caldwell called after him, desperation creeping into his voice. "Look, it was a simple misunderstanding, no harm done, right?" Marcus paused, turning slowly. "Officer Caldwell, I've dedicated my career to ensuring the law treats everyone equally. We'll discuss what happened here after I've fulfilled my obligations to my client." The controlled dignity in his voice was more damning than any shouted threat could have been. Have you ever been wrongfully accused? The feeling of helplessness is something many of us understand. Subscribe to see justice served in cases like these. Courtroom 305 hummed with tense anticipation. News of the embezzlement case had drawn a full gallery. Financial crimes involving Fairfield County's elite always did. Gregory Richardson, former CFO of Meridian Healthcare, sat at the defense table alongside his junior counsel, Ellis Bennett, whose inexperience was evident in his nervous paper shuffling. Judge Patricia Hernandez checked her watch for the 3rd time. "Mr. Bennett, we've waited 12 minutes. If lead counsel doesn't appear immediately, we're proceeding without him." District Attorney Vincent Taylor rose smoothly. "Your Honor, the state is prepared to begin. Perhaps Mr. Richardson should consider this absence when evaluating his legal representation." His smile didn't reach his eyes. Taylor had lost to Marcus Alexander twice in the past year, and clearly relished the opportunity to face the inexperienced Bennett instead. Richardson leaned toward Bennett, whispering urgently, "Where is he? Marcus has never been late before." "I don't know," Bennett replied, scanning his phone for messages. "I've tried calling and texting. Nothing." Judge Hernandez tapped her gavel once. "In the matter of State versus Richardson, we will proceed with—" The courtroom doors opened and Officer Caldwell entered, walking briskly to the front. "Your Honor, I apologize for the interruption. There's been a security incident that might impact today's proceedings." Judge Hernandez frowned. "What kind of incident?" "A potential breach of courthouse security, Your Honor. I've apprehended a trespasser who was attempting to enter restricted areas this morning." "And this concerns our proceedings how, Officer Caldwell?" Caldwell straightened, shoulders back. "The individual was carrying documents related to this case, Your Honor. We believe he may have been attempting to impersonate court personnel." A murmur ran through the gallery. Taylor raised an eyebrow, suddenly interested. "This is a serious allegation," Judge Hernandez said. "Was this person claiming to be affiliated with the court?" "Worse, Your Honor. He was claiming to be an attorney, said he was here for the Richardson case." Richardson jerked upright in his seat. Bennett's face went pale. "He believes this may explain defense counsel's absence," Caldwell continued. "The individual had a fraudulent ID and documentation that appeared to be related to today's proceedings." Judge Hernandez leaned forward. "Officer Caldwell, are you suggesting someone was attempting to impersonate Mr. Alexander?" "Yes, Your Honor." Caldwell nodded solemnly. "Unfortunately, we've seen this kind of thing before. People watch too many legal shows, think they can talk their way into a courtroom." He shook his head with practiced concern. "The individual became belligerent when questioned. I was forced to detain him for everyone's safety." "Where is this person now, Your Honor?" "In custody, Your Honor. I've filed charges for criminal trespass, impersonating an officer of the court, and resisting security personnel." Judge Hernandez turned to the court clerk. "Miss Rodriguez, please contact Mr. Alexander's office. We need to verify if he's actually planning to appear today." Rodriguez hesitated, exchanging glances with Bailiff Wallace, who stood rigidly by the judge's bench. "Your Honor, If I may continue," Caldwell interrupted. "The individual was extremely convincing. African-American male, approximately 40 years old, wearing an expensive suit. Had what appeared to be legitimate-looking credentials, though obviously falsified." Judge Hernandez's eyes narrowed slightly. "You're certain the credentials were falsified?" "Absolutely, Your Honor." Caldwell's confidence never wavered. "In my 20 years of courthouse security, I've developed an eye for this sort of thing. When questioned, the subject became verbally aggressive, refusing to comply with standard security procedures." Taylor rose again. "Your Honor, while this is concerning, perhaps we should proceed with the trial. The state is prepared, and Mr. Richardson has alternate counsel present." Bennett stood quickly. "Your Honor, I'm only junior counsel. Mr. Alexander has all the key defense materials. I'm not prepared to—" "When I attempted to escort him from the premises, he became physically combative. I was forced to restrain him for the safety of the court and its personnel." At the back of the courtroom, Officer Reyes shifted uncomfortably. He caught the eye of Officer Thompson, who had also responded to Caldwell's call earlier. Thompson gave an almost imperceptible shake of his head. "Did anyone else witness this incident?" Judge Hernandez asked. "Officers Thompson and Reyes assisted in the detention," Caldwell replied. "They can corroborate my account." Judge Hernandez gestured to the two officers standing at the back. "Officers?" Thompson stepped forward reluctantly. "I arrived after Officer Caldwell had already detained the individual, Your Honor." "And what did you observe?" Thompson glanced briefly at Caldwell. "The subject was restrained. Officer Caldwell explained that he had been uncooperative and attempted to breach security." "Did you personally observe any aggressive behavior from this individual?" Judge Hernandez pressed. "No, Your Honor. He was already handcuffed when I arrived." "Officer Reyes?" Reyes stepped forward. "Same as Officer Thompson, Your Honor. I didn't witness the initial interaction." Judge Hernandez frowned. "So neither of you actually observed this alleged aggressive behavior?" "They arrived after I had the situation under control," Caldwell interjected. "But I have video evidence. I activated my body camera once the situation escalated." As Caldwell approached the bench with his phone, Sophia Chen slipped quietly from her position and showed something to Bailiff Wallace on her tablet. Wallace's expression tightened as he viewed the screen. Caldwell played a short clip that showed Marcus struggling against handcuffs, his face partially visible. "Get your hands off me. This is completely unwarranted." Marcus's voice came through the phone's speaker. "As you can see, Your Honor," Caldwell said, stopping the video, "the subject was combative and refusing to comply with security protocols." Judge Hernandez studied the brief clip. "This doesn't show the beginning of the interaction, Officer Caldwell. Unfortunately, I only activated my camera once the situation became volatile," Caldwell replied smoothly. "But I've documented everything in my incident report." From the gallery, whispers began to circulate. The Richardson case was already high profile, and this unexpected drama only added to the spectacle. Judge Hernandez sighed. "Given these unusual circumstances, we'll take a 15-minute recess to sort this out. Mr. Bennett, use this time to contact Mr. Alexander's office. Mr. Taylor, my chambers, please." As the judge stood, the courtroom doors opened again. A court officer entered, escorting a man in handcuffs. The courtroom fell silent. Marcus Alexander walked steadily down the center aisle, hands cuffed before him, his normally impeccable appearance marred by a visible bruise on his cheekbone and his torn suit jacket. His expression remained composed, dignified despite the circumstances. Behind him came Zoe Chen, her expression a barely controlled mask of professional fury. Officer Caldwell froze mid-stride, the blood draining from his face. "Your Honor," the court officer began, "Security Chief Dawson asked that this detainee be brought directly to your courtroom." Judge Hernandez stared at the handcuffed man, then at Officer Caldwell, comprehension dawning in her eyes. "Remove those handcuffs immediately," she ordered. As the court officer complied, Marcus Alexander straightened his shoulders and walked directly to the defense table where his client waited. "Marcus," Richardson half rose from his seat, "what happened to you?" "A misunderstanding," Marcus replied calmly, though his eyes told a different story as they locked onto Officer Caldwell. "Justice delayed is justice denied. Comment truth if you believe everyone deserves fair treatment regardless of appearance." The courtroom sat in stunned silence as Marcus Alexander took his place at the defense table. His handcuffs removed, he straightened his torn suit jacket with the quiet dignity of a man accustomed to maintaining composure under pressure. The bruise on his cheekbone had darkened to an angry purple, stark against his skin under the fluorescent courtroom lights. District Attorney Vincent Taylor stared openly, his earlier smugness replaced by confusion. His gaze darted between Marcus and Officer Caldwell, who stood frozen near the witness stand, the color continuing to drain from his face. Judge Hernandez broke the silence. "Would someone care to explain why defense counsel has been brought into my courtroom in handcuffs?" Before anyone could respond, Marcus spoke, his voice steady and controlled. "Your Honor, with all due respect, I'd like to address that matter after we've dealt with my client's case. Mr. Richardson deserves his day in court without further delay." "Counselor," Judge Hernandez replied, "while I appreciate your professionalism, I cannot simply ignore what appears to be a serious breach of protocol." She turned her attention to Officer Caldwell. "Officer, you just testified that you detained someone attempting to impersonate Mr. Alexander, yet it appears you actually detained Mr. Alexander himself." Caldwell's mouth opened and closed, no words emerging. "Your Honor," Zoe Chen interjected from behind Marcus, "I believe courthouse security footage will provide clarity on this situation. I've already requested that it be preserved." Judge Hernandez nodded. "Ms. Rodriguez, please make that request official. We'll review the footage after today's proceedings." Her gaze hardened as she looked at Caldwell. "Officer, remain in the courtroom. We will address this matter thoroughly once the Richardson case has concluded for the day." Caldwell took an involuntary step backward. "Yes, Your Honor." Marcus turned to his client, speaking quietly. "Gregory, I apologize for the delay. Are you ready to proceed?" Richardson nodded, still staring at the bruise on his attorney's face. "Marcus, what happened?" "Later," Marcus replied, opening his briefcase. Right now, let's focus on your defense. Judge Hernandez tapped her gavel. Now that counsel is present, we will proceed with State versus Richardson. Mr. Taylor, your opening statement. As Taylor moved to address the jury, Marcus glanced at the gallery. The reporters were scribbling furiously, clearly more interested in the unexpected drama than the embezzlement case. This wasn't just about him anymore. The incident would make headlines, potentially affecting his client's case. Taylor delivered his opening with practiced precision, outlining how Richardson had allegedly embezzled $2.3 million from Meridian Healthcare's employee pension fund. The evidence will show, Taylor concluded, that the defendant systematically diverted funds meant for hard-working employees' retirements into his own accounts. Defense? Judge Hernandez nodded to Marcus. Marcus stood, buttoning his jacket over his torn lapel. He approached the jury box with measured steps, the silence in the courtroom absolute. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, he began, his voice clear and confident despite the morning's events. My name is Marcus Alexander, and I represent Gregory Richardson. He paused, allowing his gaze to meet each juror's eyes. Before I outline our case, I want to thank you for your service. The justice system works only when citizens like you commit to finding the truth, regardless of appearances, regardless of assumptions, regardless of bias. Several jurors glanced at the bruise on his face, then at Officer Caldwell, who had moved to the back of the courtroom. The prosecution has painted a simple picture, a greedy executive stealing from hard-working people. It's an emotionally compelling narrative, but like many simple narratives, it ignores crucial complexities. Marcus moved closer to the jury box. The evidence will show that Mr. Richardson actually discovered the embezzlement scheme and was working with federal authorities to identify the true perpetrators when he was abruptly and wrongfully charged. For the next 12 minutes, Marcus outlined a defense so methodical and compelling that even Taylor looked concerned. Without notes, despite the morning's trauma, Marcus cited specific transactions, dates, and regulatory filings that supported Richardson's innocence. As Marcus returned to his seat, Judge Hernandez addressed Taylor. Prosecution, call your first witness. Taylor rose. The state calls Olivia Mercer, Meridian Healthcare's former controller. As Mercer took the stand and was sworn in, Officer Caldwell attempted to quietly exit the courtroom. Judge Hernandez noticed immediately. Officer Caldwell, I instructed you to remain in the courtroom. Her voice cut through the proceedings like a blade. Sorry, Your Honor, I was just... Remain in your seat, now. The steel in her voice left no room for argument. Taylor proceeded with his questioning of Mercer, establishing the basic financial structure of Meridian Healthcare and how Richardson had access to the pension accounts. Throughout the testimony, Marcus took careful notes, occasionally whispering to Richardson or reviewing documents from his partially restored case file. When Taylor concluded, Judge Hernandez turned to the defense. Your witness, Mr. Alexander. Marcus approached the witness stand, showing no sign of the morning's ordeal except for the visible bruise. Ms. Mercer, he began pleasantly, you testified that Mr. Richardson had sole access to transfer authorities for the pension accounts, correct? Yes, that's correct. Marcus nodded. I'd like to direct your attention to Defense Exhibit A. This is the authorization protocol for Meridian's financial accounts. Could you read Section 3.2, highlighted in yellow? She hesitated, then read. All transfers exceeding $50,000 require dual authorization from both the CFO and the controller or CEO. Thank you. Marcus smiled slightly. So Mr. Richardson could not in fact make these transfers alone. He would need authorization from either you as controller or Mr. Harrington as CEO, correct? Well, yes, technically, but no further questions at this time, Your Honor. Marcus returned to his seat. Taylor looked startled by the brief cross-examination. Judge Hernandez checked her watch. We'll break for lunch and resume at 1:30 p.m. As the courtroom began to clear, Judge Hernandez addressed the security personnel. Chief Dawson, Officer Caldwell, and Mr. Alexander, please approach the bench. Marcus spoke quietly to Richardson before joining the others at the judge's bench. Chief Dawson looked deeply uncomfortable, while Caldwell seemed to be searching for the nearest exit. "I want a full explanation of what happened this morning," Judge Hernandez stated flatly. "Chief Dawson?" "Your Honor, we're still gathering facts, but it appears there was a serious error in judgment by Officer Caldwell. Mr. Alexander arrived at the courthouse this morning and was detained by Officer Caldwell under the misunderstanding that he was impersonating an attorney." "A misunderstanding," Judge Hernandez repeated coldly. "Mr. Alexander, would you care to elaborate?" "Your Honor, at approximately 8:30 this morning, I entered the courthouse through the main entrance. Officer Caldwell confronted me, refused to check my credentials, physically assaulted me, placed me in handcuffs, and detained me in a holding room. When I identified myself as counsel for the Richardson case, he accused me of lying and impersonating an attorney." "Is this accurate, Officer Caldwell?" Judge Hernandez's voice was dangerously calm. Caldwell swallowed hard. "Your Honor, it was a misunderstanding. He wasn't wearing a visitor badge, and attorneys don't wear visitor badges, Officer Caldwell. They have bar credentials, which Mr. Alexander has confirmed he offered to show you." "I didn't think he was really—" Caldwell stopped himself abruptly. "You didn't think he was really what, Officer Caldwell?" Judge Hernandez pressed. The silence stretched uncomfortably. "Your Honor, you didn't think an African-American man in an expensive suit could possibly be a legitimate attorney. Despite my repeated statements identifying myself, despite offering to show you my bar credentials, despite the fact that my name is on today's docket." Caldwell had no response.
"Your Honor," Chief Dawson interjected, "we take this matter extremely seriously. Officer Caldwell has been removed from duty pending a full investigation." "Not good enough," Judge Hernandez replied. "Officer Caldwell came into my courtroom and knowingly gave false testimony. He attempted to cover up his actions by claiming Mr. Alexander was impersonating himself." She turned to Marcus. "Counselor, do you wish to press charges?" Marcus considered the question carefully. "At this moment, Your Honor, my priority is representing my client. Once the day's proceedings are complete, I'll make that determination." His eyes met Caldwell's. "I believe in accountability, not retribution." "Very well." Judge Hernandez turned to Dawson. "I want the security footage from this morning delivered to my chambers immediately. Officer Caldwell, you are not to leave this courthouse until I've reviewed that footage and determined appropriate next steps. Is that understood?" "Yes, Your Honor," Caldwell mumbled. As they dispersed, Zoe Chen approached Marcus. "The footage has already been secured," she said quietly. "Multiple copies stored in separate locations." Marcus nodded. "Thank you." "How are you really doing?" she asked, concern evident in her voice. Marcus straightened his tie, his expression resolute. "I'm doing my job. The rest can wait." He returned to the defense table where his client waited, his steps measured and deliberate. Whatever personal vindication might come later, right now he had a case to win. Justice for his client came first, a principle that Officer Caldwell had failed to comprehend when he saw only the color of Marcus's skin and not the content of his character. Sometimes your biggest mistake is underestimating the person you're mistreating. Subscribe to see more moments where prejudice backfires. When court resumed after lunch, Marcus Alexander stood at the defense table, a different man than the one who had been dragged into the courtroom in handcuffs 3 hours earlier. He had used the break to visit the courthouse restroom, where he'd carefully cleaned the dirt from his face, straightened his tie, and used a courthouse stapler to temporarily repair his torn jacket lapel. The bruise on his cheekbone remained visible, a purple badge of injustice that drew the eye of every juror. Officer Caldwell sat rigidly in the back row, under orders from Judge Hernandez not to leave the courtroom. The morning's confrontation and subsequent revelation had transformed him from an authority figure to a subject of scrutiny. Courthouse staff whispered as they passed him, and several attorneys who had witnessed Marcus's detention earlier now openly stared.
District Attorney Vincent Taylor called his second witness, Meridian Healthcare's IT Director, Harold Foster. Mr. Foster, Taylor began after the witness was sworn in, please explain your role in discovering the financial irregularities at Meridian. Foster leaned toward the microphone. I was conducting a routine system audit when I noticed unusual access patterns to our financial databases. Transfers were being initiated from Mr. Richardson's credentials at odd hours, midnight, 2 a.m., weekends. And this was concerning because, Taylor prompted, Mr. Richardson was known for maintaining strict work hours, 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. He'd often talked about work-life balance in company meetings. Taylor nodded. What did you do with this information? I reported it to our CEO, Bradley Harrington. He asked me to monitor the situation without alerting Mr. Richardson. Marcus made notes, his pen moving steadily across the legal pad. Richardson leaned over, whispering something, and Marcus nodded almost imperceptibly. Did you continue to observe unusual activities? Taylor asked. Yes. Over the next 3 months, I documented 17 late-night access instances, all from Mr. Richardson's credentials, all involving pension fund accounts. Taylor entered Foster's documentation into evidence, then asked, in your expert opinion, could these access patterns have been someone other than Mr. Richardson using his credentials? Objection, Marcus called, rising smoothly. Calls for speculation. Your Honor, Taylor countered, Mr. Foster is an IT security expert. This falls within his area of expertise. I'll allow it, Judge Hernandez ruled. The witness may answer. Foster cleared his throat. Based on the access patterns and security logs, the transactions originated from Mr. Richardson's office computer and required his security key. It's highly unlikely someone else could have executed these transactions without his knowledge. Thank you. Taylor turned to Marcus. Your witness, Counselor. Marcus approached the witness stand with measured steps, his posture relaxed but focused. Mr. Foster, you testified that the transactions required Mr. Richardson's security key. Could you explain what that means exactly? Meridian uses physical security keys, small USB devices that must be inserted into a computer to authorize high-level financial transactions. And where would this security key typically be kept? Mr. Richardson kept his in his desk drawer, company policy. Marcus nodded. Company policy required him to keep it in an unlocked desk drawer inside his office. Foster shifted uncomfortably. Well, the drawer had a basic lock, but... A basic lock, Marcus repeated. Would that be the standard issue furniture lock that came with the executive desks at Meridian? Yes, I believe so. And how many master keys to these locks existed in the building? Foster hesitated. I'm not certain. Would it surprise you to learn that Meridian's facilities department had 12 master keys that could open any desk in the executive suite? Marcus placed a document before Foster. Please read the highlighted section. Foster read silently, then looked up. It says 12 master keys were issued to maintenance and cleaning staff. Marcus nodded. So anyone with one of these master keys could access Mr. Richardson's security key, correct? Technically, yes, but, Mr. Foster, Marcus continued, you mentioned that Mr. Richardson was known for maintaining strict work hours, which is why after-hours access from his credentials seemed suspicious. Are you aware that Mr. Richardson's wife was diagnosed with stage 3 breast cancer 6 months before these unusual access patterns began? Foster's expression changed. No, I wasn't aware of that. And you weren't aware that Mr. Richardson had arranged with CEO Harrington to work unusual hours so he could accompany his wife to chemotherapy treatments during regular business hours? No, I wasn't informed of that arrangement. Marcus's voice remained steady, but there was a subtle intensity to his questioning that hadn't been present before the morning's incident. So Harrington knew about these unusual hours, asked you to monitor his activities without informing him, but never mentioned the approved work hours accommodation? That's correct. Foster looked increasingly uncomfortable. One final question, Mr. Foster. During your system audit, did you check access logs for any other executives? No, Mr. Harrington specifically asked me to focus on Mr. Richardson's activities. Thank you. Marcus returned to his seat. Taylor called his next witness, Bradley Harrington, Meridian's CEO. As Harrington was sworn in, his confident demeanor contrasted sharply with Foster's growing discomfort. Throughout Harrington's direct examination, Marcus studied him intently. The CEO testified about discovering the embezzlement, confronting Richardson, and reporting the matter to the authorities. His testimony painted Richardson as a trusted colleague whose betrayal had shocked the entire company. When Taylor concluded, Marcus stood for cross-examination. The subtle shift in his demeanor was noticeable, a coiled intensity that hadn't been present earlier. Mr. Harrington, you testified that you were shocked to discover Mr. Richardson's alleged embezzlement, correct? Yes, absolutely devastated. Greg was like family. Marcus nodded sympathetically. Family is important. Speaking of family, you were aware that Mr. Richardson's wife was undergoing cancer treatment, correct? Yes, a tragic situation. We all supported Greg during that difficult time, including allowing him flexible work hours. Of course, I told him family comes first. He could work whatever hours he needed. Marcus walked to the defense table, retrieving a document. I'd like to enter Defense Exhibit C, Your Honor. These are Mr. Harrington's emails to the IT department. He handed copies to the judge and prosecutor, then placed one before Harrington. Could you read the highlighted email, dated March 17th? Harrington scanned the document, his expression tightening. That's taken out of context. Please just read the highlighted portion, Marcus pressed. Harrington cleared his throat. Foster, Richardson's accessing financial systems at odd hours. Monitor all his activities and report directly to me. Don't alert him or anyone else. This is between us. Thank you. Marcus retrieved another document. Now, Defense Exhibit D, an email from you to Meridian's Board of Directors, dated April 3rd. He placed it before Harrington. Please read the highlighted portion. Harrington's jaw tightened. Richardson's absence during business hours has become problematic. I recommend restructuring the financial department to reduce his authorities until his personal situation stabilizes. Marcus paced slowly before the witness stand. So while you told Mr. Richardson to take all the time he needed, you were simultaneously documenting his absences as problematic and attempting to reduce his authority. The board had concerns about his availability. I see. Marcus retrieved another document. Defense Exhibit E, from Meridian's quarterly SEC filing, signed by you. Please read paragraph 3, highlighted in yellow. All executive officers, including CEO Bradley Harrington and CFO Gregory Richardson, maintain strict internal controls over financial reporting, with no individual having singular authority over fund transfers exceeding $50,000. Marcus paused, allowing the words to settle. Yet you testified earlier that Mr. Richardson had the ability to execute these transactions independently, contradicting Meridian's SEC filings that you signed. Or is your testimony today inaccurate? The courtroom was silent. Even Taylor seemed unable to formulate an objection. Harrington's composure cracked slightly. The system has safeguards, but there are ways around them. Ways that you, as CEO, would be aware of. Objection, Taylor finally called. Counsel is badgering the witness. Withdrawn, Marcus said smoothly.
Mr. Harrington, when federal investigators first contacted Meridian about financial irregularities, who did they speak with initially? Me, initially. And when was that? Harrington hesitated.
February 12th. February 12th, Marcus repeated. 5 weeks before you instructed Mr. Foster to monitor Mr. Richardson's activities. Did you inform Mr. Richardson about this federal inquiry? No, we weren't sure who was involved. I see. Marcus returned to the defense table, retrieving yet another document. Defense Exhibit F, Your Honor. This is a letter from the SEC to Mr. Richardson dated January 30th, acknowledging his confidential whistleblower report regarding potential financial improprieties at Meridian Healthcare. The courtroom erupted in whispers. Taylor stood abruptly. Your Honor, the defense has not provided this document in discovery. Actually, Marcus countered, this was included in our supplemental filing last week, page 142 of the document production. I have the received acknowledgement if needed. Judge Hernandez reviewed her notes. The document was properly disclosed, Mr. Taylor. Please continue, Mr. Alexander. Marcus turned back to Harrington. Mr. Richardson reported financial irregularities to federal authorities 2 weeks before they contacted you, Mr. Harrington. Were you aware of that? Harrington's face had lost all color. No, I was not. One final question, Marcus said, his voice quiet but carrying throughout the courtroom. The pension funds that were allegedly embezzled, approximately $2.3 million, were they ever recovered? No, Harrington replied, his voice strained. That's why we're here. Marcus nodded thoughtfully. Interesting. Because I have here, he retrieved a final document, a Swiss banking record showing a transfer of $2.3 million to an account registered to Oceanic Holdings, a shell corporation based in the Cayman Islands. A corporation listing Bradley Harrington as its beneficial owner. The courtroom erupted. Taylor jumped to his feet, objecting vehemently. Judge Hernandez called for order repeatedly. When the commotion subsided, Marcus stood calmly at the center of the storm. Your Honor, the defense moves for an immediate dismissal of all charges against Mr. Richardson. We further request that the District Attorney's Office investigate Mr. Harrington for the embezzlement in question, obstruction of justice, and perjury. Judge Hernandez surveyed the chaos of her courtroom, the ashen-faced CEO, the thunderstruck prosecutor, the defendant who sat in stunned disbelief, and at the center, Marcus Alexander, who had begun his day handcuffed and humiliated, now stood as the architect of a stunning reversal of justice. Court will recess for 30 minutes while I consider this motion, Judge Hernandez announced, her gavel echoing through the suddenly silent room. As Marcus returned to his seat, Richardson gripped his arm. You knew it was Harrington all along. I nodded slightly. The evidence pointed that way from the beginning. We just needed him to incriminate himself. From the gallery, reporters rushed from the courtroom, eager to file the breaking story. At the back, Officer Caldwell sat forgotten, witnessing the man he had assaulted and degraded this morning, now commanding the courtroom with unprecedented skill and authority. The true measure of professionalism is performing excellently even when treated unfairly. Drop a heart if you admire Marcus's composure. At 4:37 p.m., after extensive chambers conferences with both attorneys, Judge Hernandez returned to the bench. The courtroom had remained full despite the extended recess, the gallery packed with reporters, courthouse staff, and curious attorneys who had heard whispers of the morning's incident. Based on the evidence presented by defense counsel, Judge Hernandez began, I am granting the motion to dismiss all charges against Gregory Richardson. She turned toward the former defendant. Mr. Richardson, you are free to go. The court apologizes for the ordeal you have endured. Richardson nodded, emotion evident on his face as he shook Marcus's hand firmly. Additionally, Judge Hernandez continued. "I am referring this matter to the District Attorney's Office for immediate investigation of Bradley Harrington on potential charges of embezzlement, perjury, obstruction of justice, and filing false reports." She turned to the prosecutor. "Mr. Taylor, I expect your office to move expeditiously on this matter." Taylor stood, clearly still processing the day's dramatic reversal. "Yes, Your Honor, we will begin immediately." "Mr. Harrington is remanded to custody pending arraignment," Judge Hernandez ordered. "Bailiff, please take him into custody." As Bailiff Wallace led a shell-shocked Harrington away, Judge Hernandez addressed the courtroom again. "Now, we have another serious matter to address." Officer Ethan Caldwell approached the bench. Caldwell rose slowly from his seat at the back of the courtroom, his earlier confidence entirely evaporated. As he walked forward, the whispers followed him like shadows. "Officer Caldwell," Judge Hernandez began, once he stood before her, "earlier today you testified in this courtroom that you detained an individual attempting to impersonate defense counsel. You claimed this individual became belligerent and required physical restraint. You presented video evidence that you claimed supported these allegations." Her voice hardened. "We now know that individual was, in fact, attorney Marcus Alexander, who was lawfully entering this courthouse to represent his client." Caldwell stared at the floor. "It was a misunderstanding, Your Honor." "A misunderstanding," Judge Hernandez repeated coldly. "Mr. Alexander, would you join us, please?" Marcus approached the bench, standing several feet away from Caldwell. "Your Honor, before we proceed, I want to be clear that my primary concern is ensuring that what happened to me this morning doesn't happen to anyone else. This isn't about personal retribution." Judge Hernandez nodded. "Your professionalism is noted, Counselor. However, serious violations occurred today that cannot be ignored." She turned to her clerk. "Ms. Rodriguez, please play the security footage." The courtroom lights dimmed slightly as a large monitor descended from the ceiling. The screen flickered to life, showing the main entrance of the courthouse from an elevated angle. The footage was crystal clear with audio. Marcus Alexander could be seen entering the courthouse at 8:32 a.m., dressed in his suit, carrying his briefcase. He passed through the security checkpoint without incident, showing identification to the first officer. As he proceeded toward the elevators, Officer Caldwell intercepted him. "Excuse me," Caldwell's voice came clearly through the speakers. "Where do you think you're going?" "Good morning, officer," Marcus replied politely. "I'm heading to courtroom 305. I'm representing a client in the Richardson case." "Sure you are," Caldwell responded, stepping directly into Marcus's path. "Let me see some ID." Marcus reached for his wallet. "Certainly. I'm attorney Marcus Alexander. I believe we've actually met before during the Gonzalez trial last month." Before Marcus could produce his identification, Caldwell grabbed his arm. "Another ghetto rat trying to sneak in. You people never learn." The courtroom gasped collectively at the slur. Judge Hernandez's expression darkened further. On screen, Marcus remained calm. "Officer, I'm an attorney licensed to practice in this jurisdiction. If you'll just let me show you my credentials." The footage showed Caldwell shoving Marcus against the wall without provocation. "Shut up. I know a trespasser when I see one." "I'm defense counsel in the Richardson case," Marcus insisted, still not resisting. "Judge Hernandez, courtroom 305, check the docket." The punch came suddenly, Caldwell driving his fist into Marcus's stomach before spinning him around and handcuffing him roughly. "You filthy animals don't belong in courthouses. Learn your place," Caldwell said as he tightened the handcuffs. The footage continued, showing Caldwell dragging Marcus away as his briefcase fell, documents scattering across the floor. Several passers-by witnessed the incident, but did nothing to intervene. Judge Hernandez stopped the footage. The courtroom sat in stunned silence. "That's enough," she said, her voice tight with controlled anger. "Officer Caldwell, the footage directly contradicts every aspect of your testimony this morning. Marcus Alexander was not belligerent, he did not resist, he identified himself correctly and attempted to show his credentials, which you refused to examine. Instead, you physically assaulted him, used racial slurs, and falsely imprisoned an officer of this court." Caldwell's face had gone gray. "Your Honor, Be very careful about your next words," Judge Hernandez warned. "You are already facing potential charges of assault, false imprisonment, filing a false report, and perjury. Do you wish to add anything to that list?" Caldwell fell silent. Chief Dawson stepped forward. "Your Honor, on behalf of courthouse security, I want to express our deepest apologies to Mr. Alexander and to the court. This behavior does not represent our values or training. Officer Caldwell has been suspended effectively immediately, and we are initiating termination proceedings." Judge Hernandez nodded. "Mr. Alexander, do you wish to press criminal charges?" Marcus considered the question carefully, aware that every eye on the courtroom was upon him. "Your Honor, what happened to me today was unexcusable. However, I believe that addressing the systemic issues is more important than punishing one individual." He paused. "I would prefer that Caldwell face administrative consequences through proper channels, and that the court focus on ensuring such incidents don't happen to others who may not have my resources or platform." A murmur of surprise ran through the courtroom. Even Judge Hernandez looked somewhat taken aback. "That's unusually merciful, Counselor," she observed. "Not merciful, Your Honor, strategic. Individual prosecutions rarely change institutional cultures. I would, however, like to formally request an investigation into Caldwell's past interactions with minorities at this courthouse." Judge Hernandez leaned forward with interest. "Do you have reason to believe this is a pattern of behavior?" "I do," Marcus confirmed. He signaled to Zoe Chen, who approached with a thick folder. "During the lunch recess, my colleague compiled complaints filed against Caldwell over his 7 years at this courthouse. There are 27 formal complaints alleging similar treatment of minority attorneys and courthouse visitors. Every single complaint was marked unsubstantiated and no action was taken." Judge Hernandez accepted the folder, her expression growing grimmer as she scanned its contents. "This is deeply troubling." Each of those complainants was dismissed individually, but collectively they tell a compelling story of systemic discrimination that has been repeatedly ignored. Bailiff Wallace stepped forward hesitantly. "Your Honor, if I may." When the judge nodded, he continued, "I've witnessed Caldwell's behavior on multiple occasions. Many of us have. But the culture here..." He glanced around uncomfortably. "There's an unwritten rule about not reporting other officers." "A blue wall of silence," Judge Hernandez observed. "Yes, Your Honor." "And yet you're speaking now, Bailiff Wallace." Wallace straightened his shoulders. "What I saw on that video, and what happened to Mr. Alexander today, it crossed a line I can no longer ignore." From the gallery, another courthouse security officer stood. "Your Honor, I've witnessed similar incidents." Then another officer rose, and another. Judge Hernandez surveyed the scene with a mixture of disappointment and resolve. "It seems we have a serious institutional problem that extends beyond Caldwell." I turned to the Chief of Security. "Mr. Dawson, I am ordering a comprehensive review of all security personnel at this courthouse. I want every complaint re-examined, every incident report audited, and every officer interviewed." I paused. "And I want an outside agency conducting this review, not an internal investigation." "Yes, Your Honor," Dawson replied, looking decidedly uncomfortable. "Furthermore," Judge Hernandez continued, "I am ordering the implementation of a new protocol for attorney identification and access to this courthouse. No attorney should ever face what Mr. Alexander experienced today." Marcus nodded his appreciation. "Thank you, Your Honor." Officer Caldwell. Judge Hernandez turned her attention back to the now trembling security officer. You are suspended without pay pending the
outcome of these investigations. You are to surrender your credentials and security access immediately. She paused. Consider yourself fortunate that Mr. Alexander has chosen not to press charges at this time. That option remains open should he change his mind. Caldwell nodded mutely. This court is adjourned, Judge Hernandez announced, her gavel falling with finality. As the courtroom began to clear, Marcus gathered his materials at the defense table. Richardson had already left, eager to return to his wife with the news of his exoneration. That was unexpected, Zoe Chen commented as she helped organize the case files. Most people in your position would have demanded criminal charges. Marcus glanced toward the back of the courtroom, where Caldwell was surrendering his badge to Chief Dawson. Charging Caldwell might provide personal satisfaction, but it wouldn't address the underlying problems. 27 complaints, Zoe. 27 people who were ignored. He shook his head. The system failed long before today. So what now? She asked. Marcus closed his briefcase with a decisive click. Now, we make sure the 28th complaint is the one that changes things. 3 days after the courthouse incident, Marcus Alexander sat in his office reviewing documents for an upcoming case. Despite the media frenzy surrounding the Richardson verdict and what newspapers had dubbed the courthouse confrontation, Marcus had returned to work immediately, refusing to let the incident disrupt his professional obligations. His phone buzzed with a text from Zoe Chen. "Channel 4 outside again. Want me to send them away?" Before he could respond, his office door opened and Zoe entered, looking apologetic. "Sorry about the circus. I've told them you're not interested in interviews." Marcus nodded his thanks. It'll die down eventually. He gestured to the stack of papers before him. The Watkins brief isn't going to write itself. Zoe studied her partner carefully. The bruise on his cheekbone had faded to a yellowish hue, but the psychological impact of being publicly humiliated and assaulted was less visible. "You haven't taken a single day off. Maybe you should." "I'm fine," Marcus insisted, returning his attention to the documents. "You're not fine," Zoe countered gently. "No one would be after what you experienced." Marcus looked up, his expression carefully controlled. "What would you have me do, hide at home? That's not who I am." "I know." Zoe sat across from him. "But acknowledging the trauma doesn't make you weak, it makes you human." Before Marcus could respond, his office phone rang. "Marcus Alexander?" "Mr. Alexander, this is Lena Washington from the District Attorney's office. District Attorney Taylor would like to meet with you today if possible." Marcus checked his calendar. "I can be there at 3 p.m. After ending the call, he looked at Zoe. "Taylor wants to meet. About Richardson?" "We'll see." Marcus closed the Watkins file. "How many calls have we received since Monday?" Zoe hesitated. "From potential clients? 47. From people claiming to have experienced similar discrimination at the courthouse? 33 and counting." Marcus nodded thoughtfully. "We need to document every one of those accounts." "Marcus," Zoe began carefully, "we're a corporate defense firm. We don't have the bandwidth for a civil rights crusade." "Then we'll make bandwidth," Marcus replied, his tone leaving no room for argument. "What happened to me was terrible, but I had resources, credentials, and a platform. Most victims of discrimination have none of those advantages." Zoe smiled slightly. "I knew you were going to say that. That's why I've already reached out to the Civil Rights Law Clinic at the university. They're willing to help coordinate statements from the complainants." Marcus smiled for what felt like the first time in days. "This is why we're partners." The district attorney's office occupied the 4th floor of the county municipal building. As Marcus entered the reception area, he noted the stares from staff members who clearly recognized him from the news coverage. The receptionist immediately ushered him into Taylor's office without the usual waiting period. Vincent Taylor stood as Marcus entered, extending his hand. "Counselor, thank you for coming. Please, have a seat." Marcus took the offered chair, noting the stack of folders on Taylor's desk. "I assume this is about more than just the Richardson case?" "Indeed," Taylor sat, looking uncharacteristically uncomfortable. First, I want to personally apologize for what you experienced at our courthouse. It was inexcusable, and it's prompted a much-needed examination of our entire system. Marcus nodded. Apology accepted, but I'm more interested in actions than words. Fair enough. Taylor opened the top folder. We've begun a comprehensive review of every case Officer Caldwell was involved with over the past 7 years. So far, we've identified 43 cases where he provided key testimony or evidence. And in 12 of those cases, we've already found significant discrepancies between his incident reports and other evidence. Taylor looked genuinely troubled. We're prioritizing cases where defendants received jail time based primarily on Caldwell's testimony. How many? 17 so far. Taylor slid a document across the desk. We're filing motions to vacate those convictions where appropriate. Marcus reviewed the document. This is significant. It's just the beginning, Taylor admitted. The judge's ordered review of courthouse security has uncovered a pattern of discriminatory practices extending beyond Caldwell. 3 additional officers have been suspended, and Chief Dawson has resigned. I'm not surprised, Marcus commented. Institutional discrimination requires institutional support to persist. Taylor nodded grimly. There's more. Judge Hernandez has appointed an independent commission to establish new protocols for courthouse security, and she's specifically requested your participation. My participation? As a legal advisor, Taylor clarified. Your experience, both professional and, unfortunately, personal, makes you uniquely qualified. Marcus considered the request. I'll need to review the commission's scope and authority before committing. Of course. He hesitated, then continued. There's one more matter. Bradley Harrington. The real embezzler, Marcus noted. Yes, after your revelations in court, we executed search warrants on his residence and financial records. We found evidence not just of the Meridian embezzlement, but of similar schemes at 2 previous companies. Taylor looked genuinely impressed. How did you connect the dots to Oceanic Holdings? Marcus allowed himself a small smile. Gregory Richardson didn't just contact the SEC as a whistleblower. He conducted his own investigation when he first suspected financial irregularities. He traced preliminary transfers to the Caymans, but couldn't identify the beneficial owner without subpoena power. And when he became the prime suspect, he provided me with everything he'd discovered. The rest was basic financial forensics. Taylor shook his head in admiration. Harrington's attorney has already reached out regarding a potential plea deal. I hope you're not feeling generous, Marcus remarked. After what he put Mr. Richardson through, not a chance. Taylor gathered the folders on his desk. One last thing, Mr. Alexander. Officer Caldwell. Marcus tensed slightly. What about him? The internal investigation has uncovered additional incidents that rise to the level of criminal conduct. The county prosecutor will likely file charges by the end of the week, regardless of your personal decision not to press charges. Taylor met Marcus's eyes directly. They may request your testimony. Marcus nodded slowly. If subpoenaed, I'll cooperate fully. But my focus remains on systemic reform, not just individual punishment. Taylor seemed to study him with new respect. Most people in your position would want revenge. Justice isn't revenge, Marcus replied simply. And justice requires fixing broken systems, not just punishing broken individuals. As Marcus left the district attorney's office, his phone buzzed with the news alert. He opened it to find a press release from the county commissioners announcing a formal investigation into hiring and training practices at the courthouse, with a focus on identifying and addressing institutional bias. By the end of the week, the story had grown beyond Marcus Alexander's personal experience to encompass the larger issues of institutional racism and accountability in the justice system. National news outlets picked up the story, interviewing former complainants and exploring the broader implications. On Friday afternoon, Marcus was preparing to leave the office when his assistant announced an unexpected visitor, Gregory Richardson. "Gregory," Marcus greeted his former client warmly. "How are you?" "Better than I have been in months," Richardson replied, looking visibly relieved compared to the last time they'd met. "Laurel's doctors are cautiously optimistic about her last test results, and the board has asked me to return to Meridian as interim CEO." "That's excellent news," Marcus said sincerely. "You deserve it after what you've been through." He nodded. "Which is why I'm here. I wanted to thank you personally, not just for clearing my name, but for how you handled yourself that day. When they brought you into the courtroom in handcuffs, most attorneys would have demanded a continuance, maybe even a mistrial. You just carried on. You put my case before your own ordeal. It was my job, Marcus replied simply. No, Richardson shook his head. It was extraordinary, and we both know it. He placed an envelope on Marcus's desk. The board approved this unanimously this morning. Marcus opened the envelope to find a check made out to the newly established Fairfield County Legal Defense Fund for a substantial amount. What is this? Meridian's contribution to the nonprofit you're establishing, Richardson explained. We followed the news. When we heard you were creating a fund to provide legal representation to victims of discrimination within the justice system, we wanted to be the first corporate sponsor. Marcus stared at the check, momentarily speechless. I haven't even filed the paperwork yet. It's still just an idea. A necessary idea, Richardson insisted. What happened to you in that courthouse shouldn't happen to anyone. But when it does happen, people deserve the same quality of representation you provide your clients. After Richardson left, Marcus sat at his desk contemplating the check and all it represented. His phone buzzed with a text from Zoe. Judge Hernandez called. The commission meets Monday at 10 a.m. Are you in? Marcus typed his reply. Absolutely. What would you do if you were in Marcus's position after winning? Seek damages or create change? Share your thoughts below.
3 months later, Marcus Alexander approached the main entrance of Fairfield County Superior Court, his leather briefcase in hand. Unlike his last visit, he was expected and eagerly anticipated. The Montero case had generated significant media interest, and as lead counsel for the defense, Marcus's arrival had drawn a small crowd of reporters. "Mr. Alexander, how does it feel to return to this courthouse?" a reporter called out. "I'm here to represent my client," Marcus replied professionally. "That's my only focus today." As he reached the security checkpoint, he noted the changes immediately. New signage clearly outlined identification procedures for attorneys. Security officers wore body cameras with visible indicator lights, and most significantly, a large placard displayed the newly adopted courthouse access protocols that had been implemented following the Independent Commission's recommendations. Officer Reyes, who had been present during Caldwell's false testimony 3 months earlier, now staffed the main security station. "Good morning, counselor," he greeted Marcus with genuine respect. "Courtroom 305 again today?" "Courtroom 402 this time, Judge Wallace presiding." "Former bailiff Wallace," Reyes noted with a smile. "His appointment to the bench was well-deserved." Marcus nodded in agreement. After coming forward during the Caldwell investigation, Terrence Wallace had been recognized for his integrity and subsequently appointed to fill a judicial vacancy. His first official act had been to establish a courthouse ethics committee composed of security personnel, attorneys, and community representatives. As Marcus proceeded through security without incident, he reflected on the dramatic changes of the past 3 months. The investigation into courthouse security had resulted in 7 terminations, 15 suspensions, and a complete overhaul of training and supervision protocols. Chief Dawson had resigned, replaced by Dr. Elena Ortiz, a former civil rights attorney with a background in institutional reform. The elevator doors opened, and Marcus found himself face-to-face with Vincent Taylor. "Counselor," Taylor greeted him. "Ready for the Montero opening statements?" "Always," Marcus replied with professional courtesy. Their adversarial relationship in the courtroom had not prevented a growing mutual respect. "I heard about Harrington's plea deal," Marcus commented as they rode to the 4th floor. 20 years seems appropriate." Taylor nodded. "He has also forfeited all assets derived from the embezzlement schemes. The pension funds will be fully restored to Meridian's employees." He glanced at Marcus. "Your work on that case was exceptional, especially given the circumstances." "Thank you," Marcus replied simply. As they exited the elevator, Taylor asked, "How's the Legal Defense Fund coming along?" "We've taken on 12 cases so far, all individuals who experienced discrimination in the justice system but lacked resources for adequate representation.
I heard you hired Sofia Rodriguez as your executive director. Marcus nodded. She witnessed discrimination in the courthouse for years without having the power to address it. Now she does. They paused outside courtroom 402. And Caldwell? Marcus's expression remained neutral. He pled guilty to assault, filing false reports, and perjury. 8-year sentence, eligible for parole in 4. He paused. I provided a statement to the court recommending that his sentence include mandatory implicit bias training and community service after his release. Taylor raised an eyebrow. Still focused on rehabilitation over punishment. Justice isn't a zero-sum game. True reform requires both accountability and opportunity for redemption. Before entering the courtroom, Marcus checked his phone and found a text from Zoe. Governor's office called. They want to discuss your appointment to the Judicial Reform Commission. Details when you're back. Inside courtroom 402, Marcus took his place at the defense table, arranging his materials with practiced efficiency. His client, Elena Montero, watched him with the desperate hope of someone whose life hung in the balance. Will everything be okay? She whispered nervously. Marcus met her eyes with steady confidence. Miss Montero, I can't promise a specific outcome, but I can promise that in this courtroom, you will receive the fair trial that every person deserves. As Judge Wallace entered and court was called to order, Marcus stood tall. His brief detention 3 months earlier had been traumatic, but from that injustice had sprung meaningful change. The Fairfield County Courthouse now operated under new protocols, bearing his direct influence. The Legal Defense Fund provided representation to those who would otherwise face the system alone. And perhaps most importantly, the culture of silence that had protected discriminatory practices had been broken. In the case of State versus Montero, is the defense ready to proceed? Marcus buttoned his suit jacket and stepped forward. Yes, Your Honor, the defense is ready. As he began his opening statement, Marcus was acutely aware that his presence in this courtroom represented more than just Elena Montero's defense. It represented the resilience of justice itself. The principle that despite human failings, despite institutional flaws, the arc of the legal system could indeed bend toward fairness when people of conscience insisted upon it. 3 months earlier, Officer Ethan Caldwell had dragged Marcus Alexander from this courthouse in handcuffs, convinced that a black man in an expensive suit couldn't possibly be a legitimate attorney. Today, Marcus stood exactly where he belonged, at the defense table, ensuring that the promise inscribed on the courthouse entrance, where justice prevails, was not merely an empty slogan, but a living reality. As he concluded his opening statement and returned to the defense table, Marcus caught sight of a new group of young attorneys entering the gallery. Diverse faces observing the proceedings with hopeful attention. Among them was Darren Washington, a recent law school graduate whom Marcus had mentored after learning that Washington had been one of Caldwell's previous victims. The defense calls its first witness, Marcus announced, his voice carrying the quiet authority of someone who had faced injustice and transformed it into change. Outside the courthouse, a new sign had been installed beside the main entrance. It read, "Equal justice under law. This courthouse belongs to all people." And beneath those words, in smaller text, "Implemented under the Alexander Protocols, 2023. Sometimes, standing firm in the face of injustice creates change that helps thousands. If this story inspired you, subscribe to see more moments where courage transforms broken systems. Have you ever witnessed discrimination in a place that should represent justice? Share your experience below. And remember, as Marcus Alexander demonstrated, true courage isn't just about fighting back. It's about fighting forward, creating systems that protect everyone, not just those with power and privilege. Because justice isn't just a concept, it's an action. It's a choice we make every day to stand up, speak out, and ensure that where justice prevails isn't just an inscription on a courthouse wall. It's a reality we create together. Subscribe now to see more powerful moments where prejudice meets its match.